would like to greet all the freedom-loving people around the world today. My name is Lynn Thompson, also known as Lethal Lynn. I'm the founder of Cold Steel Knives. You may have heard of it if you like knives. And also, I own the names Never Unarmed, I've trademarked that name, and the Axe Gang. And today, I want to talk to you about Never Unarmed, why I trademarked it, and what I have to offer and to say today. But before I do that, I want to quickly let you know that what I'm saying today, my views and my expressions, are not those of the current owners of Cold Steel necessarily. I'm no way speaking on them for their behalf or representing them in any way. Make no mistake. I'm talking to you today because I'm angry. I think it's a righteous anger, and I think many freedom-loving people around the world are experiencing it. I'm outraged at the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. And I regret the enormous loss of life and the loss of life that's to come. And I want to talk to you today, freedom-loving people, about how you can avoid the fate of the Ukraine and offer the Ukraine some of my hard-learned lessons on how to resist overwhelming force. I think they're doing a marvelous job. The Ukrainian military is fighting with great courage, but they're small in number. There's 44 million people in the Ukraine, but they have a very small population of troops, 200,000 troops total, out of a population of 44 million. There's 190,000 Russians, as you well know, invading your country. You've put out a call to arms of your citizens. Look at Europe. For centuries, you have denied your citizens the right to keep and bear arms. In England, I thought you would have learned the lesson in World War II after Dunkirk, when you lost all of your armies, all of your munitions, and faced the imminent invasion of Hitler. You came to the United States and asked us to supply you arms in this Lend-Lease thing, which we generously did. You asked the people of America to give our personal weapons. Tens and tens of thousands of weapons were donated to the Home Defense Forces of England in World War II to arm your citizens that had no arms of their own against an imminent German invasion. How did you pay these people back after World War II? Instead of sending the guns back, instead of thanking the people that donated them, you crushed them and gave them all a finger. Wake up, England. You may very well be next. Yes, you have a very good military. The military soldiers and sailors and air personnel in England are very high trained. You have nice equipment, but you're very few in number, and your citizenry, your reserves, are totally unarmed. Why? Because you don't trust the common person with his own personal arms. That's why we have the Second Amendment in America. Our founding fathers had the great wisdom, I think, from God, to write into our Bill of Rights the right for each individual to keep and bear arms. That means to keep them in their homes and wear them on their person when they go out, like I'm armed right now. We're in my training facility on my ranch. We jokingly call this our ninja camp. This is where we do a lot of our outdoor fighting and training with handheld weapons, but I won't digress into that. I'm going to get back to England. You, in your great wisdom, you socialists, have decided that your people can't be trusted with arms. Well, when we came over here mostly from England, those hundreds of years ago, we didn't like that. We didn't like all the nobility and the rich people oppressing us, and we didn't want that to happen in our own country. That's why we fight so hard for our Second Amendment, our right to keep and bear arms. Now in Europe, I want to talk to everybody in Europe right now. You've denied in whole your citizens the right to keep and bear arms. Yes, in Germany, if you apply and you study and you go jump through a bunch of hoops, you can get a few guns. But largely, your populations are unarmed and untrained, just like the Ukraine today. right now in America, everyone wants to knock the NRA. And yes, it has its faults. I don't agree with all of its leadership, and I don't agree with all of its policies, but I'll tell you what, the NRA has done a tremendous job of training many ordinary citizens in the safe, correct use of arms, the responsible use of arms. I can guarantee you right now, the president of the Ukraine would love to have 6 million armed NRA members in his country. The other day on YouTube, I saw a huge queue of people lined up in Kyiv to get an AK-47. They said they were going to give out 18,000 AK-47s. One of the recipients, when he got his rifle, said that he really didn't know anything about guns. He didn't know anything about war. He had nothing to do with it. He'd made no personal preparation ever to defend his country. But now he stood on the brink of losing everything he loved. His family, his home, his country. And he says, I have nothing left to lose now. I have to fight. Well, it's a lot better to fight if you're prepared and trained than it's an impromptu thing and you've never fired a gun and someone hands you a gun and said, okay, stand over there. That's not the way to do it. So I'm talking to all of Europe now. I'm talking to the leaders of France. I'm talking to the leaders of Germany. I'm talking to all the Nordic countries. I'm talking to all my friends in Europe. Wake up and smell the bacon. Smell the coffee. There's a wolf loose in the sheepfold. And the only way you're going to stop him is you're going to have to put him down. You're going to have to fight. America is not going to come continually to your aid and bail you out. You need to fight for yourselves. Wake up. Wake up. Years ago, many of you don't know this, some of the European countries took themselves upon themselves to start bombing Libya. And I saw an article in the LA Times, very potent article to me, and it talked about our defense minister here in the United States, Secretary of Defense, saying, what good was it for us to have members of NATO? They were paper tigers. In 1 week, these NATO countries had expended most of their munitions on bombing and sending rockets and stuff at Libya, and they turned around and asked the U.S. to resupply them. Their coffers are empty. You don't have any ammunition. You don't have vast quantities of missiles and cannon shells and all the other instruments of war and the supplies you need. You need to get them. Germany, shame on you. The biggest exporter in the world is Germany. You spend 1% of your gross national product on defense. Shame on you. Same thing for France. Same for so many countries. And I'm gonna talk about some of my favorite countries in a minute. But I want you to wake up and decide right now that you're going to change. The biggest single asset you have to defend your countries is your people. That's what Ukraine's doing right now. That's Ukraine's hope. The hope of Ukraine today is not Javelin missiles coming in from Germany. It's not Stingers coming in from other European countries. That's not going to do it. What's going to do it is the huge sacrifice that's going to be required of the Ukrainian people to die for their country. They need to get small arms, rifles, pistols, grenades, mortars, machine guns, and they need to take it to the Russians. You need to shoot them at 500 yards. You need to sneak up behind them and shoot them at 10 feet. There should be no place a Russian can stick his head out of a tank or an armored personnel carrier or a building that somebody isn't shooting at him. Now, our forefather Thomas Jefferson said that the tree of liberty must be frequently watered with the blood of martyrs. Right now, I heard last night there's only been about 500 or 600 people that I know of killed in the Ukraine. That's not going to do it. I'm sorry, Ukrainians. You're going to have to shed blood like rivers to drive out the Russians. You're going to have to do without lots of luxuries and hunker down and fight. Look at, people have forgotten World War II. To stop Germany, the Western Allies had to kill 8 million Germans. When Germany invaded Russia And Russia fought them to a standstill and pushed them back. It cost them in blood, rivers of blood. 8 million Russians or more died fighting Germany. At one time in Russia, 1 out of 7 people had a family member who had been killed by the Germans. It's going to take huge sacrifice, but the bulwark of every nation's strength is its common man. The armies that you have today are tiny. They're ridiculous. Let's talk about that. The United States has a population of 332 million, and we have 485,000 in our regular army, and 336,000 in the National Guard, and 189,500 in reserves. That's nothing. Hey, Russia, if you want to invade the United States, there's millions of guys like me that this is just a small fraction of my arms. There's millions of guys like me that will shoot you dead. Come over here, China, and we will shoot you dead. Not the Army, not the Navy, not the Marine Corps, not the Air Force. Me, guys like me. We're going to do it. There's millions and millions and millions of us. And I want to say to all of our liberal and socialist politicians that hate guns, you're going to love guns just right now like they do in the Ukraine when the wolf is at the door. The other day they gave out 18,000 AK-47s to anybody. There was no background checks. There was no investigations. There was nothing. They're in dire straits. They need every citizen that's willing to fight for their country pulling the trigger. Remember that about the United States. When you knock and you attack the rights of all of us that believe in being armed, you're hurting our security, our national security, and you don't think about that. That's one of the reasons our founding fathers wanted us all to be armed. That's why we can keep arms, because it's very difficult for any standing army around the world to come over and conquer a people that's armed to the teeth. Look at Switzerland. Everybody in Switzerland joins the army. Everybody's in the reserves. Everybody keeps their battle rifle and their full turnout gear at home. They're ready to fight within just a matter of hours if they're invaded. They got it right. They've pre-planned. They've planned for the wolf to attack the sheepfold. Everyone needs to do that now. Everyone's gotten fat, lazy, complacent, happy, and stupid. And we got a massive wake-up call just 5 or 6 days ago when Russia crossed Ukraine's border. I want to talk to President Putin. There's many things I admire about you. I like the fact that you like martial arts. I love the martial arts and have trained in the martial arts since I was a very young boy, since I was 11 years old. I like the fact that you love big dogs. I like the fact that you're an outdoorsman and you like to hunt. But I hate the fact that you decided to attack your neighbors without any provocation. I hate the fact that you decided to kill innocent men, women, and children to get your way. Yes, I understand that you want to unify Russia. Well, you're going to have to talk people into it. You don't have a right to force them by force of arms, by invading their countries and killing their citizens, to take those things back. Talk them into it. Look at, I love the Russian people. I have many friends in Russia. The Russian people, when I owned Cold Steel, were really good to me. Same thing from the Ukraine. They bought many of my knives. There's many outdoorsmen, many martial artists, super martial artists coming out of Russia right now, where they still value some machismo. And I admire that about them a lot. You're smart. You've got great strength, great national character. You don't need to do this to be an awesome nation. You don't need to invade the Ukraine. You could do it on your own. I say the same thing to China. President Xi. I love the Chinese people. I've been to China many times. I've spent weeks and weeks and weeks in China. And everybody in China has been enormously good to me. Polite, nice, kind. I love the Chinese people. But I don't admire your agenda that you're working on right now. I don't admire your attempts to subdue the South China Sea and make it China sovereign territory. I don't admire your designs on the Philippines, which I love dearly, and on Japan. I don't admire your designs on South Korea. I don't admire your designs on Vietnam, Thailand, and India. Look at, the Chinese are brilliant people, blessed by God with tremendous minds, all kinds of physical strength. You've got a 1.4 billion population. You could do it on your own. You could be a superpower on your own. You could be a huge economic power on your own. You don't need to invade anybody else, and you don't need any more territory. Do it yourself. Don't take from others. But sadly, it's a law of nature since sin entered the world that if you have something and somebody else wants it and you're not willing to fight to defend it, they will take it from you. I love Canada. A lot of people don't know it, but I come from a long line of farmers. I'm the first generation in my family that hasn't farmed. I take that back. I've got a couple cousins that had farms. I now have a ranch, so I guess I finally ended up a farmer rancher. But for many years, Thompsons farmed in Saskatchewan, and Canada was really good. My dad and my Uncle Merle, when they lived on the Rainy River in International Falls, they went to school in Canada. I love Canadians. I love Canada. I'm very upset at how the government's treated Canadians, nonviolent Canadians, when they protested your heavy-handed actions over there in the government. But what I really want to talk about is the leaders of Canada right now. You have a nation of 38 million people, a vast landmass with unimaginable natural resources. And you have a tiny, insignificant armed forces. Canada has 68,000 regular forces and 27,000 men in reserves to defend a vast landmass, a vast border, and unimaginable natural resources the whole world will envy. You're depending on the United States to defend you. So far we have. But we have a very, very weak president right now. He's a weak sister. He's frail. He's incompetent. He's, in my opinion, acted in treason when he left all of that arms and munitions and all of our citizens in Afghanistan. $66 billion. I'll bet the president of Ukraine would love to have the arms and the weapons that we left to the Afghani Taliban right now to fight the Russians. I'll bet he'd give his left arm for it. That's a huge amount of military material, Mr. President, that you left over and the people you left behind. The United States needs that. But getting back to Canada, you need to wake up, Canada. China has eyes on your country, your vast resources, all of your empty spaces. Russia too. You're vulnerable, very vulnerable on both your west and your east coast. If you were suddenly invaded or infiltrated, you're going to do very little to stop them. Your population, oh yeah, there's a lot of Canadians that have rifles and shotguns, but very few that have assault rifles. You're going to have a hard time stopping them if you don't trust your people with the arms and the ammunition they need to defend your country. In contrast, in the United States, we have 330 million people and we have 330 million guns. Last year alone, Americans woke up. We had 7 million new gun buyers for the first time. People are understanding that a government isn't going to be able to protect you when the wolf is at the door. You're going to have to do it yourself. Let me talk to my friends in Taiwan. Now, Taiwan has blessed me personally tremendously. The people of Taiwan, my friends that own factories there, my agents there, I've been doing business a long time. I love Taiwan. Taiwan right now is under tremendous threat of invasion from China. But you know what? The Taiwanese people are almost universally unarmed. If you're caught with an unauthorized firearm in Taiwan, it's the death penalty. Most people are very, very unfamiliar with firearms. Many have never shot them at all. Yes, there is mandatory Army service. But I've talked to many people that served in the Army, and it was a very poor experience. They shot their weapons just a few times. They're very, very inexperienced with those weapons. Hey, that needs to change, Taiwan. You need to take a page out of Switzerland's book and arm your citizenry today and teach them how to fight, how to use weapons. It's not that hard. If you guys don't know how to do it, I'll teach you how. It's not that hard. I can teach any person that has any physical strength and desire to be very effective with a rifle, a shotgun, or a pistol in one day. I've done it many times. I taught many, many women to be absolute threats out to 30 yards with a pistol in one single day of training. You won't believe it. I'll help you if you want. Now, a lot of you say, how are we going to do that, Len? We can't afford it. I'll tell you what. Come on over here. Do you see these rifles here? These are all air guns. You can teach your entire population how to fire a rifle just using air guns. Air guns are super inexpensive. You can shoot them for pennies for every shot. Very easy to train, very safe. You don't need a big backstop. You don't need a long range. You can teach somebody how to shoot a rifle very effectively with an air gun at 10 and even 20-yard ranges. You don't believe me? Have me over there. I'll teach you how. I'll give you the program how. I'll teach your people how to fight. Air guns and .22 rifles should be in every free-loving nation's household. Everyone should be practicing. When that wolf comes to your sheepfold and you're sitting there with no arms, only 18,000 guns to give away, most of your population fled, a few courageous people willing to fight, men and women both, you're going to wish that in your population of 40 million people that you had a lot more trained civilians. Taiwan has a population of 23.57 million people. They have 88,000 troops. 88,000. You think you're going to stop China with 88,000 troops? Yes, I know a little bit about your defense plans, but so does China. I know you have redoubts in the mountains, and you've bought a bunch of jets and stuff. But your country is like Switzerland in that you do have a lot of mountains and hills and very inaccessible places where you could hold off huge enemy forces if your population was armed, but they're not. You don't have enough armed forces. You don't have enough troops. But if you armed your civilians and they learned how to shoot, you'd be a power. No one wants to invade Taiwan if you could have 300,000 or 400,000 civilians shooting 300 Winchester Magnums at them at 400 and 500 yards. Look at. This is just a very few of my 300 Win Mags. Come in here so they can see this. Here's three that I use a lot, but I have a lot more. You can buy a 300 Win Mag from Japan, Howa, with a scope at a really reasonable price. I can teach any one of your people that's of any type of average physical strength to be able to hit a human target at 300 yards in one day. And 3 or 4 days, I'll have them hit a human target at 500 yards. It's a lot cheaper to buy 300 Win Mags than it is tanks and jets and Stingers and Javelin missiles. There's nowhere a Chinese invader can stick up his head that you can't hit him in Taiwan. Think about it. I hope you contact me. Wake up, Taiwan. I love you. I love your people. I care about your well-being. I'm not saying this in anything but love and concern. Let's talk about Korea. I love South Korea. I have a lot of South Korean friends. I've got one of my students and training partners is from South Korea. I love him and his family. One of the gals that goes to my church is Korean. I love her. There's so many Koreans that have helped me and been good to me over my life. I worry about your country. Yes, you have a pretty good military, but let's talk about it. You have a nation of 51.78 million people, and you have a military of 3,750,000. Better than most. Very substantial. You get it, but in wide part, an overwhelming wide part, your civilians are unarmed and untrained. Those 58 million people, or 54 million people outside your army, have probably never fired a gun. Wake up, smell the bacon. As you well know, North Korea is only 30 miles or so away from your capital. They can be there in a hop, skip, and a jump. The only thing that's going to stop them is a couple 100,000 South Koreans shooting at them with 308s and 300 Win Mags that they own themselves. Maybe you could put 1 million or 2 million people into that. That's an unstoppable force. I don't want to go up against South Korea with a 3 million man army and 2 or 3 million civilians all shooting at me. Nobody does. Let's talk about my friends in the Philippines. Recently, the Filipino president said, "Oh, we can't fight China." Hey, someday you may have no choice. Right now, Ukraine doesn't want to fight Russia. They didn't pick this war. They don't want to fight. They have no choice. If they want to be Ukrainians, if they want to keep their life, if they want to keep their country, they're going to have to fight for it, or somebody else will take it from them. It's the same thing in the Philippines. I love Filipinos. I'm a master in Filipino martial arts. I've been blessed by many, many Filipinos. My teacher, Guru Danilo Santo, is Filipino. Many, many, many of my friends are Filipino. When I was in 6th and 7th grade, my best friends were all Filipino. I didn't hang out with white kids. I hung out with Hispanic and Oriental kids. That's who I grew up with. I love the Philippines. And I want the president and the politicians in the Philippines to understand that they need to train and equip their civilians now. Even if you're only training them with air guns and airsoft guns, get them started, because you have a lot of islands. It's very difficult for someone to conquer all those islands, and you can fight a guerrilla war and a war of attrition that will grind anybody down easily. Look at Mindanao, how the Muslim population there has resisted you for years and years and years. I suggest you enlist them. I'll speak to all the Muslims, Filipinos in Mindanao. I'm sure you have differences with your government that makes you want to fight. I don't pretend to know what they are, but I know this. I don't think you want to speak Chinese and become subject to China. China's proven they have no respect for the Muslim religion. Look what they've done to the Uyghurs. Killed them wholesale. So I say to all the Filipinos in Mindanao, be ready to fight for your country. Be ready to set aside your differences and use that huge fighting spirit that you have and be ready to harness it to repel invaders. I want to talk to my friends in Japan. Japan used to be an enormous military power. In World War II, I think you grossly abused that power. You hurt the people of China, Korea, Taiwan, all of Asia tremendously, and you suffered for it. After the war, you adopted a much more peaceful profile. You have a very good self-defense force, really super naval vessels and planes and all kinds of stuff. You're a nation of 125 million people, but you only have 247,000 in your defense forces. Right now, China is shooting missiles near your islands, your homeland. They're probing, they're testing. They're building the biggest fleet, naval fleet the world's ever seen right now. Bigger than the U.S.'s fleet. Although, I doubt anywhere near as good. You need to, I know that Japan and Australia are some of the biggest exponents, the biggest proponents rather, of gun control in the world. You tried to take away the private ownership of Brazil and finance the anti-gun movement there, and you were resoundingly defeated at the ballot box. Why? Why are you so distrustful of your citizens? A country that can't trust their citizens with arms, that government can't be trusted in itself. I know the Japanese people quite well. I've been to Japan many, many times. Japan helped me start Cold Steel. I tried for 4 years to get production in the United States and was beat down and shut off at every turn. I went to Japan, and the people in Seiki, Japan, the factories there, they helped me. God bless you. I'll always love you for it. I love the Japanese people. They've always been nothing but nice to me. Wake up, Japan. Start trusting your people. Teach them how to fight. Get them started in school, shooting air guns and soft air. Get them to learn to shoot a .22. Get them to learn to shoot a battle rifle and be like Switzerland and trust them. The men and women of your country, trust them with their own private arms. That is your sure defense. 128 million people. You can put a lot of people in those hills, in those mountains, on those islands with rifles like this. 300 Win Mags, 308s, AR-10s, AR-15s, their own shotguns, military surplus. Let's talk about military surplus for a minute. Right now, people are sending stuff to Ukraine. Well, there's a crap load of military surplus arms still in Europe. Greece has a lot. Turkey has a lot. Israel has a lot. There's a crap load of military surplus arms in 8mm and 308. I suggest you send those to Ukraine to fight off the Russian wolf. Look, you don't need an AK-47 or an assault rifle to defend your country. You can do it with a single shot. You can do it with a double-barrel shotgun. There are a ton of surplus guns like these out there that could be utilized for the defense of Ukraine. They need guns and they need ammunition in abundance. Let's talk about ammunition. Right now in the United States, we have lots of mortar shells and artillery shells, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But in my opinion, we don't have near enough small arms ammunition, and I'll tell you why. In the first Iraqi war, a lot of people were still being issued 1911s because we didn't have enough sidearms. And when they went to our caches and our armories, they found there was almost no .45 ammo, no .45 ACP. Where'd they get it? They had to buy it from Israel. Shame on us, United States. I want to see part of the U.S., a big part of the U.S. defense budget, be switched over to ammunition. I trademarked this saying: an empty gun is a poorly balanced club. I also say, no money, no wife. No ammo, no life. You need the guns and, more importantly, the ammunition in abundance. One thing that gives me heart in America is that I've gone to gun shows all across the country for 30 years. And the vast, vast, vast amount of ammunition that's in private hands is unimaginable. China, Russia, any other aggressor, if you turn your foul eyes on the United States with mayhem and loot and pillage in your heart, know this: there's millions and millions, there's 350 million guns in America, but there's billions and billions and billions of rounds of ammunition to shoot through them. Now, again, I'll come back to all the socialists and liberals that don't want to trust their population with guns. Hey, wake up. You just saw what happened to Ukraine. They don't have enough guns, they don't have enough ammunition, and they don't have enough trained people. Now I want to talk to my friends in India. India has one of the largest standing armies in the world, about equal to China's, within a couple 100,000. They're pretty evenly matched. But I'll tell you what, almost no one in India outside the army is trained in the use of arms. The average good Indian person, and I love the Indian people. I've been to India many times. I have many Indian friends. I've done business with India for years and years and years when I owned Cold Steel. I love India. I want only the very best for you. But you got a neighbor that's a wolf. Not the people in China. I love the people, but the government has got hungry eyes. As you know, you've had lots of border skirmishes, incursions, and small wars. Have faith in your people. Train them now to use and bear their own arms. You've got over 1 billion in population. 10 million, 20 million, 30 million people that know how to use a bolt-action rifle, a semi-automatic rifle, or even a shotgun will be an enormous deterrent to Russia and China. You also have the courage to use it. Look at, I never served in our armed forces, but all my family has. On my dad's side, my paternal grandmother, her father was a Barnes and her mother was a White. Through my paternal grandmother, I can trace my blood back to the Mayflower. Every single member of my blood has fought in every war and every action the United States has had. All my uncles, my mom's brothers, my dad's brothers, all fought in World War II. My dad was a quartermaster on a submarine. My Uncle Merle served in the Navy. My other uncles all served in the Army. One was lost for years and presumed dead, my Uncle Joe. My Uncle Billy Stewart, he was a Marine. He fought in some of the major island campaigns. I found that out. He never mentioned it to me. And one time my mom mentioned it in passing. I asked Uncle Billy if he'd tell me about it. He said, Len, it was so horrible that things I saw, and worse, the things I did, I never want to revisit or talk about again. Lots of my people sacrificed. That's why I made this DVD. It cost me about $200,000 to make this DVD. It's called Never Unarmed. It's all the guns and firearms and ammunition that you need, that I suggest you learn to be very familiar with and expert in, from air guns to elephant guns. There's about 16 to 18 hours on these DVDs of training. I'm getting ready to make a few more. That's the reason I started Never Unarmed. Never Unarmed is about freedom. Never Unarmed is about encouraging Americans and free-loving people around the world to acquire their own arms and learn how to use them and stand ready to defend themselves, their communities, and their families with. Again, I want to emphasize that I have no animosity towards the people of Russia, towards the people of China, to anybody of a religion that I don't agree with. I may not agree with you. I may not agree with your goals. I may oppose you, but I am historically tolerant. I will not offer you violence because I don't agree with you. That's what being really tolerant is. Russia crossed the line. They didn't try to take Ukraine by diplomacy or by a boat or anything. They took it by force. They're trying to take it by force. Remember, no one has the right to take your life, your liberty, your home, your community, or your country by force. And it's up to you, the free people of the world, to defend it. I'm available to help you. I'm telling the national news organizations I'm willing to speak. I'm a pretty well-trained speaker, have a lot of experience in public speaking. I'm willing to go to the countries I love and that are freedom-loving and give you a program and teach you how to teach your people how to defend your country. I'm saying this at great risk to myself. I know that a lot of people will criticize me. I know that I'll get a lot of pushback, but I looked around and no one was saying anything, and I feel like this had to be said. I thank you for your indulgence today and listening to me. I ask that you share this if you believe what I do, and I ask you to become a warrior yourself. Be ready to defend yourself, your home, your community, your county, your country. And remember, a warrior is always the pillar of his community, never the pillager. I thank you.